Hi, I'm Keon, a Senior Research Analyst with Lipper. I'm here to speak to you about the fund flows activity for the week ended Wednesday, September 11th. Let's start this week's report by taking a look at the market activity. The equity markets posted strong gains for the fund flows trading week on renewed hopes for a resolution to the U.S.-China trade war. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, the NASDAQ Composite Index, and the S&P 500 Index were up 2.97%, 2.42%, and 2.15% respectively for the fund flows week. Good news in respect to the trade tensions bookended the flows trading week. The week started with both sides confirming that there would be another round of talks in the early part of October and closed with China announcing that they would exempt some types of U.S. products from the existing tariffs. The aforementioned equity markets captured the lion's share of their gains for the week on these two trading days. Let's turn our focus back now to the week's fund flows activity. We'll start by taking a look at our fund macro groups. For the week, equity mutual funds suffered net outflows of $6.6 billion. Taxable and Muni bond funds took in $3.3 billion and $879 million respectively, while money market funds had the largest net inflow for the week at $17.6 billion. We'll now explore the changes in each one of these asset groups more closely, starting with equity mutual funds. The $6.6 billion net negative flow for the group was its 30th straight weekly net outflow. Both domestic equity funds and non-domestic equity funds contributed to this week's net negative flows, as they saw $4 billion and $2.6 billion leave respectively. The largest net outflows among the regional peer groups belong to global equity income and large cap core funds, which had $983 million and $870 million leave respectively. Let's move on now to our equity ETF group. This asset group had net inflows of $13.4 billion last week, its largest weekly net inflow for the year to date. The largest individual net inflows belong to the SPDR S&P 500 ETF and the iShares Russell 2000 ETF at $7.7 billion and $3 billion respectively. The SPDR Gold ETF had the largest net outflow at $632 million. We'll turn our attention now to taxable bond funds, starting with the mutual fund side of things. This group had net inflows of $3.3 billion for the week, its 12th net inflow in the last 13 weeks. The ultra-short obligation and high-yield fund peer groups contributed most of these net inflows, with $1.3 billion and $863 million in net new money coming in, respectively. Our next group to look at is taxable bond ETFs. This group took in net new money of $4.1 billion for the week. The largest individual net inflows belong to the iShares Floating Rate Bond ETF and the SPDR Bloomberg Barclays High Yield Bond ETF, which had positive net flows of $673 million and $587 million. The largest net outflow belonged to the iShares JP Morgan US Dollar Emerging Market Bond product, which saw $489 million leave its coffers. We'll take a look at our Muni bond fund group now. This group extended its consecutive streak of run of weekly net inflows to 36. The asset group had positive net flows of $879 million for the week. The net inflows were once again concentrated within the national Muni peer groups, with general Muni debt and high-yield Muni debt funds leading the way with net inflows of $279 million and $265 million. Our last group to take a look at is money market funds. As stated earlier, this group had the largest weekly net inflow among the asset groups this week at $17.6 billion. All the peer groups within the asset group experienced net inflows during the week, led by institutional U.S. government money market funds and institutional U.S. Treasury money market funds at $6.2 billion and $3.4 billion respectively. Well, that wraps up this week's report. If you'd like to take a closer look at the data for yourself, please go to our website at www.lipperusfundflows.com, and please join us here again next week, where another one of our analysts will be speaking about the week's fund flows activity.